Today our webinar is over pool usage statistics and zTPFGI. And here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to show how to start and stop collecting data. We're going to take a look at the basic data, how to view that in the status bar area. We're going to take a look at a view pool file detail screen, which will give us the detailed data of what we're collecting. And lastly, we'll take a look at the preferences. And I'm going to say the preferences for last so that you see how the program works before we actually apply the preference, any of the preferences. And so far today it's available in 1.350 or a later revision of the program. So let's switch to our demo. And to get started, I've got my file here, my uva2.asm, and I need to go ahead and connect to a system. And we will need to lock the file in for source view trace. We're going to go ahead and trace in source view. Now once the system menu comes up, once we're into the system, you'll come over and see the menu option for pool files. And if we click that, we have two options here. The first option is collect the pool file details, and the second will be to view those details that we've collected. Now this first selection here, we want to do this after we lock it into source view trace, and we'll click it once to collect the pool file details. And what that's going to do is it's going to turn this collection on. And if you look back at the menu again, you can see that the icon here is highlighted and it is showing that we are collecting details. Another way to view that we're actually collecting is down here in the status bar. This is where our basic detail information is. You can see it says details on. That also means that we are collecting details. So let's go up now and let's run through this program and let's take a look at the basic details. So we need to create an ECB. I'm going to create an ECB with the same name in this instance. And let's just step through some of these functions. Now you're going to see when we get to the GETFC function, we're going to have one gets. So down here is the basic file information. We have the total pool files. We have one gets, no releases, and we are still collecting our data. So as we step through this, we will start to see these numbers increment. This area is the quickest way just to look at what's going on with your files. Okay, and we'll go ahead and finish that out. Collecting, if we choose, and view the pool file details, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the collection off because I'm going to show you another way to start it. So we see down here that we've got 3 gets, 2 releases. Our details are off, so we're no longer collecting details, and we have run through the program. So let's take a look at our view pool file detail. Now this screen will show us a couple of things. It'll show us our overview, short-term, long-term, lost, new, filed, and released FAs. And we've tried to sum it all up in this one area where we can see what's going on. So here, just as it shows down in the basic, we've got new FAs is 3. We've got filed as 1, released as 2, and lost as 1. Now, if we want to take a look at the short-term counts, we can do that here. Now, my test file doesn't have a lot of data in it, so these numbers will change based on your data that you're going to be processing. And here we can see that there's a summary here in each one of the status bars for the different sizes, the small, large, 4K, or the F6. And so there's a quick way to view that. These can be closed up if you want them to be closed up, or they can be expanded just by clicking on the arrows. And most of all of our windows will work that exact same way. Under the long-term counts, you can see here we, in this particular test, we had one LLT and no others, but this is the options that we have for collecting data for those types. In the loss files, we see that we had one, and the data is described here. We've got headers up there that show what each one of them are. Let's take a look at the new. We had a couple of news. Similar data type, similar structure. So once you know pretty much one screen, you're pretty much familiar with all of them. And then I released. This is very, very simple procedure. Now up here, we could recollect here. We're already viewing, so we don't need to bring the view file window back open. But instead of going back up to the menu and starting our collection over, we can collect details right here. So if we want to run back through the process, or we've stopped in mid-process and we want to restart, we can restart here. Once you restart though, it's going to zero out your collection and close the pool file detail screen. So let's go ahead and click collect details and let's close this out. Now we want to go ahead and create the CCB again so we can step back through it again. And this time we're going to go ahead and we're going to open the view screen while we are collecting. I'm going to move it up here out of the way. And I'm going to F10 and I'm going to step through the process until we get down. Okay. So right here, we notice that we did process one gets. We can see it down here, but it is not currently in our pool file detail screen. So what we need to do here is we just need to come update the screen to update what's going on here. And now we can see that we have our new FA here. And we can do this through any of the screens. We can now step on through the program and we can come back here. We can see down here in the summary, we've got 3 gets, 2 releases. They're not currently here because we haven't updated yet. So let's go ahead and let's update these counts. Now we can come back and take a look. So as long as we've got this pool file detail screen open to view these details, it's going to retain the last detail from the last update. Let's go ahead and run through the rest of our program. I'm going to close this out. We can update, and this is our final totals. So it's a very simple procedure with only having to update when the detail screen is open. If the detail screen is closed and you're running through the program, it will automatically update. Now let's close this out for a minute and let's go over and quickly look back at our one option that we have to alert when the pool threshold count is reached. And again, I'm choosing one here because I don't have that many gets in this particular program. If you've got several programs loaded, this could be 1,000, it could be 100, it could be whatever number you choose. But you have to remember that when this threshold is reached, it's going to alert you again. So that could be useful, or you know, this number just really needs to be specific on how many times you want to see that alert. Let's go ahead and put our view back up. Let's go ahead, we should be locked in. Let's go ahead and create our CB again. And let's step through and see if we can't trigger. Okay, so here's our threshold again. We're going to get a panel alert like this one here. You can view the alert panel log, you can close this panel log, or you can view the pull count options to change that value if you choose. We're going to close it here. And let's step through again. And of course, this time it created the visual ECB window. And you can see here that we've now got two pull file address gets. The alert will come up in both places in case the ECB is not viewable. And we can just go ahead and clear that. And let's step on through. Let's just run on through. Okay. Let's do an update here. And this will show all of our counts. So at this time, Chitra, I've completed everything with the demo, and we're ready for any questions again. Notice.
Steve, I hate to interrupt, but can I give a little more of an overview, maybe from a TPF?
Yes, please.
Aspect? This is Jeff Longwell. This is very similar to a product that we had in CMSTPF, TPFGI on the 4.1 product, only of course actually going to VPARs like zTPFGI. But the overall purpose of this is a couple things for a developer. One is to see how many file addresses they're actually using for a process. And a process could be one specific program like Steve was showing, where he actually logged in one and he started the counts when he got to that program. But it also could be multiple transactions or even thousands of transactions where you turn on this feature and you do a bunch of inputs or even a run an input or whatever, however you're testing, you have a lot of data and you're trying to accumulate all that data together. So you can choose by turning on and off at what scope you want to do that. Along with counts that you see, and I know we show the file addresses, but there's a lot of smarts in there. Obviously, when you get a pull file address, you're supposed to file it, and then if you really don't want it, you release it. You can't release it unless you file it. At the gets, we not only know there was a get, we also identify what that file address was. And during our tracing process, we're keeping track of everything filed and everything released. And so when we say there's a lost file address in one of the displays, we're saying there was a get since we started doing counts, but it was never filed or released. And that might be you did a get and you did an error path and you forgot you did a get, or maybe you remember, but just a bad coding error path and it never gets filed and released, which of course long-term would be a lost pull file address. So we're just trying to visually keep track of the pull usage for you. You might be running entries and you think you're using very few file addresses, but you turn that on, you do your testing, and even for a half hour, you go up and you all of a sudden find out you've used 2,000 file addresses and you thought you used like 10. So it gives you a quick look at the counts and be able to tell. So this is mainly the purpose, is how are you using the files? Are there any bad error paths or cases that you're getting a file but not putting it back to the system? And obviously you could even have more releases than gets or files, because we do retrieve records from the system during our processing and may release them. So any of those counts could be bigger, than the other, especially the releases. But that's the main purpose of this, is to give you an overview of the file system, what you're processing, and it does count only your processing once you turn.
Thanks. So there are a couple of questions. I'm now unmuting Anil now. So the question is, how do we reset the count? Is the first question from him. Anil, you're unmuted.
Morning. Yeah. So we need to look at how do you reset the count. You said you have to reset the count, otherwise it will keep adding the counts for every ECB we create, right?
And that is done by this button here, collect details. When you currently, it's enabled, so it's collecting details. When you turn it off, like I just did, it has stopped collecting. But when you trigger it back on, it's going to reset the counts, and it's going to reset the window to go out and start accumulating new counts.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
My next question was, about the segment name, which got the file, but I think I got that in the lost file address tab. We can see that segment name. So I got that answer already.
Okay.
And third question was about the broken chains. Are we putting something in to identify if we are creating a broken chain?
Jeff,
Let's
is this
say
something
we are
that you-
releasing a file which is indexed from somewhere.
I'm not sure how, no, the answer to your question is no, we haven't done anything in broken chains. I do understand broken chains, but I'm not sure what we could do to identify broken chain. Obviously, recoup processes identify those, but besides going through the whole database, did you have something in mind that maybe our tool could do to identify that for you?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. Yeah, it's not the easy thing. Yes.
Yeah,
Because
that's
we
not
can
really
control in the current TCP. We can just control if we indexed in the current TCP and then we are releasing it and not doing removing it from the index. That's the only thing we can control. But we cannot control the indexes created before the current process.
right.
And, you're right. So it's a lengthy process. The recoup can only identify that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've never had a request with anything to a broken chain to my knowledge, so I've never even thought about it. I mean, the best thing we could technically do would be have a setting, not really part of this product, but if we did a wish list thing, would be when you filed, we could look at the standard forward chain, which is only some broken chains, and not always forward chain field is used as a forward chain, and we really wouldn't know, you know, by the tool. So I don't think there's a lot we could really do with that. We just don't know enough to be able to identify something like that.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, I do have a couple of questions. This is Ronella Santos from Sabersonic Check-in. You have counts for lost file addresses. What causes that count to increment?
After you, it's okay, Steve, I answer that one?
Yes. Yes. Please.
After you've turned on this counts for this, you'd from that point on, when you anytime you get a get file address, we remember the actual file addresses. Until that file address, we know that your program has done a file on it. We consider it lost. So if you're tracing, you did a GETFC, and you look at the display, it would say you had one lost file addresses because we had that GETFC, but no file done to it. But later in your trace in your program, you file it and you look, you'd see that count went back to 0. So in the middle of a trace, you very much could see a lost file address. You just haven't yet filed it. But if you're just turn this on and don't even trace and like do a bunch of entries, then that means your program did a bunch of GETFCs, but never filed those GETFCs. And that's why we try to identify what program did the GETFC so you can go look at and say, why did this program or the programs never filed it down. But that's what identifies that count to go larger. And in theory, once the transaction done, you should have not any lost file addresses in theory.
Okay, so is there any way to find the program that did the GETFC?
Don't we identify that, Steve? Who did the GETFC?
Yes. Are we looking in our lost?
Yes.
Right. Let me put some data back in here real quick.
If there's another question, we can go while Steve's setting that up.
Is in any way, is it incorporated in zTREX, or do I have to be in debug mode to collect the statistics?
I believe this one, as you see it, is only in debug mode. Maybe Steve or Ed can answer if there's anything added or already there for zTREX about file address usage. Ed, you're muted in case you try to talk.
Yeah, I think I see pull counts, but not, all the other details such as lost file addresses.
Right. We're going to pull that up here. Just let me run through this real quick.
Right. Well, the question is zTREX. Ed, we didn't make any changes to zTREX, and I'm not a zTREX expert. Does it indicate lost file addresses today?
No, I don't believe so. If it does, I'll get Viola to correct me, but I don't think it does.
So I think to answer your question, yeah, with this feature, it's only in the debug and not zTREX. But if I don't know if zTREX actually keeps the actual file addresses for us to calculate that today. But if we add it, we would have to have some of that knowledge.
Because it would be great, I don't have to be in debug mode. I just do the entry and zTREX includes that in the collection.
Right. You don't have to go into debug, I understand. You could just you can turn this feature on and do your entries and then pull up this display.
Okay, all right.
All right, but zTREX is the advantage. You can do it and save it and give it to somebody else and all that. But you do not literally have to trace to do this feature. You just have to be connected to the system, turn it on, do your entry or entries, and then you can look at the statistics.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Okay. You getting there, Steve? Yeah, you're there.
Yes. Did we want to look at the lost FAs, or was there a different tab that we wanted to look at?
The question was when they were lost, how do you know what program got the GETFC? And I think you're showing that SO name, member name, displacement. So we show that.
Yes.
And what kind of GETFC we did based on what record ID. So I think that answers your question. Yes, you can figure out what program did the GETFC that was lost.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question is from Ron. The question is, do we have to lock in a program to gather data or just run the process and then check the counts?
And that's correct. You do not have to lock in a program. You just turn it on, run your entry or entries, and you can check the counts. You do not have to lock a program in or literally trace or debug a program to get these counts. Just turn it on. That's the only requirement before you do your entry.
Ron, you're self-muted, so you have to either unmute yourself, or if you're good with the answer, please respond. Yeah, he responded. He said that answers his question. Thank you. There was a last question from Alexei. The question is, can you see double releases?
I thought this thing pretty well through when we designed it. No, we didn't think about that. You would see it in the sense that if you looked at all files released, Steve, is there a way to sort these by file address when you look at release file address and stuff? You can automatically by file address. I mean, if you have to go manually in there, you see twice, but do we make a visual to you that it's already been released once and you're releasing it again? That's actually a good suggestion. No, we may talk between ourselves and see if that's something we can add in a later release. Typically, if multiple release detections on, once it's released, they change the record ID to question marks, and when you try to release it again, it allows you, actually. That's just a very good point. I never thought of that. We'll consider that suggestion, but not right. Currently, besides manually going through every file addresses, and you may have thousands of them, which is not a good solution. We do not identify that. Out of curiosity, what company did that come from?
Travelport.
Travelport, thank you.
The session is open for your questions. If you have any questions, you can either click on the symbol or hand raise symbol, or you can send a chat message. Christy, you're unmuted.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, this
Yes.
kid from Sabre. Do you have a kind of a summary by file ID and by program?
Well, the summary is based on what, not necessarily like per se file ID, as in, I would just want to look at this one specific file ID. It's based on our tabs here. And of course, the information is underneath there as far as the file address, the ECB ID, the record ID, and things like that.
Right. So yeah, when you run this kind of on a broad basis, it's useful to see where your problem is, right? So if you have multiple views, that will help. So usually you're looking at, okay, what's my problem area, which ID is not getting released, or whatever is being lost. So that might be useful. So kind of view by, other than by file address, file ID, and maybe by program as well.
Okay.
Each of those you can hit the tab and sort by those.
Oh, you
so
can
they're
sort,
all
okay.
together, but you can't
Okay.
actually do a count. I mean,
Right.
Okay. All right.
if you have 100 in there, you can say I want to sort by file ID. And
Right, I mean a count, yeah.
Yeah, but not
Because
don't-
if you have hundreds, yeah, it's difficult to see that.
Muting Ron. Ron, you're unmuted. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah. If I have input that like a job and it's multi-ECB and I want to collect all the data for all the ECBs, does this, if I kick it off and let it run, will will the data be collected for just one of the ECBs, or if it kicked off 3 ECBs, will it collect all the data for all 3?
It will collect all 3 as long as you had the trace turned on when you kicked off the initial ECB.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You'll notice we have our made-up ECB IDs and all the displays, so it would show you the different, ECB 6, then 7, then 8 for the other 2 you kicked off.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ronella, you're unmuted.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. Can we copy this to an Excel sheet, for example? Is there a way, an easy way to capture everything?
We don't have, well, I'll take that back. I think we can select all and copy and paste, but I believe you have to do it one tab at a time. So currently there's no way to get the data, the detailed data out of every single tab in one select all copy paste, but you can go between the tabs and do that.
We discussed that a little bit during the design of this. Of course, the 4.1 product I don't think had any feature like that, but that wasn't the reason we did Redent. We just felt like we should start with this base product and let customers use it a little bit and see what the feel's like. We didn't know if that was really historical data. Can I ask why you would want overall all the counts to be able to do that? Maybe that'll help us in future direction.
Well, so that we can maybe hand it over to someone for further analysis, for example, because we do that with zTREX, and I must admit, to be honest, I have problems with copying it and to an Excel sheet. It's missing some columns, and it would be great, if we can have that feature here as well.
Would an export feature work better over a copy feature?
Yeah. Either way, whichever is easier, as long as we capture everything with all the details and no missing information.
Okay.
It does not capture the version information in here, right? And maybe that's per system.
Doesn't capture what?
SO version? The SO version?
SOs really don't have versions online on the system. You know what I mean? There's made-up versions,
Yeah.
but there's not really. zTPF doesn't support versions, per se. I know some companies have put in metadata and stuff and version, but the true zTPF system doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Are there any further questions? Thanks again for joining us today.